we want to create kind of a jelly bean shape. So you're just gonna take your pencil, start off with sort of a backwards C, and you want it to be right in the center. And then we're gonna kind of curve. The head's gonna be just a little bit smaller, and then the bottom here is gonna be a little fatter. So just do a little curve. And this shape can change throughout as we're painting, but don't start with it too big because we need to have some room for the wings that we're gonna add later. And we just want this to be centered in the center of it. And then if we do end up changing the shape, we want a little extra space. So if we start adding more fluff, you don't want it to get bigger and bigger and bigger and then take up all the space at the edges. So start off kind of small right in the center. And we'll just start the basic shape like that. And then we'll create a little head. This is just going to be a little black section here for the head. And we'll come out. This will be the yellow gold color. And we'll have a stripe here of black. And then just create a little bit of a shape here for the other gold yellow color. And the bottom will be black here. Alright, so we'll start with our primary colors, the yellow, magenta, primary blue, and black and white. And I'm going to use my 1-inch flat brush for this, for the background. I'm just going to get my brush a little bit wet, and I'm just going to start. I'm not even going to mix the color first. I'm going to start with just taking some white right on the canvas. Oops, got a little too much water in there. That's okay. Actually, you don't want your brush too wet. My brush is really wet right now. Just a tiny bit. And then I'm just going to dip a teeny bit of black on my brush. And I'm just going to mix as I go. Don't be too concerned in the beginning. We're going to give it some texture. Just spread your paint all around. For this part, we're just covering the canvas. Paint around your little bumblebee. We just want to get all that white background covered. And then we'll get a little more involved in the details of the texture. So I just dipped a little bit of white and a teeny bit of black. I'm just kind of smudging it on there, crisscrossing. A little more black on my brush. So get those edges kind of smooth around the outline of the bumblebee. And putting a little more black and white on my brush. Get those edges. Okay, so now we can start creating the texture that we want. And this really could be anything you want. Like if you want it, whoop, drop my phone, as I do every day. So this can be really textury, or if you want it really smooth, you can just blend it however you want. You can make it as soft and blended as you want, or as textury as you want. I like to have a little bit of texture, but overall, I kind of want mine to be a little bit smoother. I'm just sort of crisscrossing back and forth to create a little bit of a blended, barely textured look. If you want to add a little more white, if you want to keep it lighter, add a little more white. If you want more of a darker background, and your background really could be any color you want to. I like the gray because it makes the black and white of the black and yellow of the bumblebee stand out more. You could do a light blue if you want it more like a sky background. Whatever you want. And I'm going to put a little bit more black. I'm going to do it a little bit darker in the edges. I always think that looks nice because it sort of brings the focus. Well, not sort of. It brings the focus to the center of the painting. So it'll look like the bees in a spotlight. And as long as your paint is still wet, it should blend really easily for you if you work fast like this. And if you got a little too much dark, just take a little more white. And this doesn't have to be perfect. This can be whatever you want. Can't really go wrong. I think I want a little more black there. In my original painting, I had a little bit darker back here. So it was kind of creating a little bit of a texture, or a little bit of a shadow behind him, the little bumblebee. So you can do that if you want. Again, no right or wrong. It's whatever you want it to be. And you could just do this for hours, so when you get to a point where you like it, it's probably a good idea just to stop. Otherwise, it'll just go on and on and on and on. And then if you want to paint your edges, go ahead. The sound may change on this video because I might switch over to doing a voiceover for this tutorial if I'm noticing like all that background is annoying. And my gardener's out front, so the lawnmower might kick in a second. Summertime. It's busy around here. Okay. I think I'm gonna be, well, I was gonna say I'm done, but now I'm adding a few more. See, you could just keep going on and on and on and on and on. Just gotta know when to stop. When to say when. Okay, I'm gonna stop. So we're gonna mix a color now. We're gonna mix kind of a golden brown color. So we're gonna take a big scoop of yellow. Let's take 2 big scoops. And I'm using my number 8 Filbert brush. I'm gonna take a little bit of magenta and a teeny bit of blue. Just little bits to start with. You can always add more, but those will go a long way in the yellow. And stir those up. So we're trying to get like a sort of a raw sienna color. That's actually perfect right there. So just keep mixing until you get like a warm reddish brown. And then we're going to start off, this one's going to be black, this stripe, Then we're gonna have the gold. So let's color in right from the base some of that color, and we'll just do that whole section. You know what, I changed my mind. On the next one, do the base of it and the edge of it. Because yellow is so transparent, it's really hard to cover a bright yellow on top of it. So this is just going to be easier for you if you just do, I'm going to wipe away that section in the middle. Hopefully you didn't already do that. Let's just do this outside edge, the inside section. Okay. Then we're going to take a little bit of this, using the edge of your brush, just kind of flick little bits to give it that textury, fluffy, hairy look. You'll see it's wiping away the paint at the base, but that's okay. We'll fill that back in. We just want it to be a little bit fluffy on those edges. And paint pretty thick. So if you push and then flick your brush, you'll get nice little pointy tips. See, I'm pushing and flicking. But you gotta have enough paint on your brush in order to keep it nice and pointy on that edge, and to keep it thick enough. Actually, let's switch to your, can you see that? Is that focusing? Your, oh my gosh, I can't think today. Number 2 round. Thank you, there we go. I don't know who I'm thinking myself, I guess. And we're just gonna use that little tiny brush and flick it right on those edges, so you get some little fluffy hairs poking out from his back. Let's go over here, do the same thing. And again, have quite a bit of paint. You want quite a bit of paint on your brush so you can get that color to show up, because having all this yellow in it makes it really transparent. We're gonna do more layers too, so don't worry. Clean off your brush. Dry your brush really well. And then we're gonna take, well, we'll just take a big scoop of yellow. You can mix it into a little bit of that color that you just had. You just want to do a few shades lighter. And then we're going to go right over that middle section. And this is like a spicy mustard color. It's going to look weird for a little bit, but we're going to do a lot of layers, so paint that pretty thick. And if it blends into the first shade, that's okay. Okay, so clean off your brush. Really well. We're going to use our, we're back to our number 8 Filbert, by the way, this one. And take the black, and we're going to fill in these other sections. For now, just get all that white covered, and then we'll add the little hairs in a second. Go all the way to the base. of the belly there. Hear the washer and dryer going. It's probably loud and distracting. So you're going to go almost to the very edge. Let's leave a little bit of space along that bottom part. And then let's just bring a little bit of black right around that center part. Okay, now we're going to take our number 2 round again. Put a little bit of black. And we're going to do the little hairs, little fluffy hairs. All on those black edges. You want to make sure they look a little bit random. You don't want it to be like perfect little lines like that. That's not what you want. You want to just push down and flick the brush and do lots of little tiny lines. Some will be a little longer, some will be a little shorter. Just want to make sure that you're pushing and flicking, pushing, flicking, pushing, flicking. See how you get nice pointy little tips when you do that? Push, flick. And don't lose the shape. You want to make sure it's still round. Make sure this is still consistent. So if you need to add a little more in certain areas, go ahead and do that. So you're just going to do this outside edge and this inside edge. We're going to add some white to the bottom of our little guy here. So clean off your brush. I'm going to use my number 8 Filbert brush. Take a scoop of white and a little bit of blue. Okay, I guess it's time to switch to voiceover because my boyfriend was singing a little song in the background. I don't know what he was doing. Anyway, so we're going to make a light blue, and we're going to be painting this on the bottom part of the bumblebee's booty. Now we're going to take our number 2 tiny round brush and we're going to add the little hairs along the bottom part. So you're going to do a mix of the light blue and then we're going to go in with some white as well. dry off your brush, and then clean your little brush. Take your little tiny brush, putting a little bit of white, make it pretty thick, and then we're just going to add little white hairs. Do a few layers. And it's okay if it mixes in a little bit with some of the blue. That's what you want. And we're just going to we'll do more on this side and then a little bit less on the left side. Now we're going to take a little bit of black and add all those little black fluffy hairs. On this, you want to make sure right now, see how it looks like it's kind of straight across on the bottom? We want to make sure you see that curve of the bottom, so just make sure all the hairs are curving with the shape of the body. Now we're going to add the eye, so you're going to take a little bit of black and a little bit of that, let's use that light blue mixture, and just create a little oval shape. And I'm keeping this really subtle so it's not too bright. So it's probably going to blend into your black a little bit, and we'll pump that up with a couple little highlights. Make sure to pay attention to the direction of the oval that you're drawing. Since the head is curved downwards, you want to make sure that oval's kind of sideways. You don't want it too upright, and you don't want to do it too high on the head, otherwise it's going to look weird. And now just add a few highlights to make it stand out just a bit more where needed. My camera turned off on me at some point, and I was going way ahead, and I don't know what the point it stopped at. So I just repainted the background, and hopefully we're at the same page here. So I'm not sure if I had mentioned this little face here. I touched up the eye and stuff. So make sure he's got like a little bottom of his face. I'm just kind of curving that around. And then the eye, I think I made the eye a little bigger. Sorry, I don't know if you caught that or not. Then we'll add a little bit more black. And with a little tiny brush, and just add a little more fluff around his head. And then we're gonna add the legs. And this is not a realistic rendering. It's just kind of an implied legs of the bee. So we're just gonna have a leg come out from here and bend down. So we're just gonna take your little tiny brush, your number 2 round brush, and we're just going a little thicker at the base here, and then skinny. Then the little leg's gonna bend, and we're just gonna end with a little point. Doesn't have to be exact, but you do want it to be a little bit pointy at the tip. So the little knee here, whatever you call this, where it bends, I'm making that a little more knobby, and then bending that down. And then I'm having a leg come out from kind of behind. This one will be on top. The first one will end up on top, but we'll start here. We'll do another little bend. And then we'll have one kind of in the background there. We'll have this one come out here. A little bit thicker at the base. These are not anatomically correct. They're just implied. Let's add a little more black on the top of this one. That one come out from behind. You just want 4 little dangly legs. They don't have to be exact. Take a little bit of that light blue. And I'm just going to add just a little highlight, a little swipe. We're just going to use a little bit of the light blue and then take a little bit of the brown. I'm just adding a few little swipes on the legs just to give it a little more color. Now I want to make that eye just a little bit bigger, so I'm taking some of the blue and just kind of expanding the whole shape of the eye. And then I'm just going to go in and tap a few little highlights. Because that black is still wet, it's creating more of a dark gray shade, and that's what we want. We don't want it to be too bright blue. And just tap in a few little highlights to really accentuate the shape of it. So let's take the number 8 Filbert, take a scoop of yellow, and a tiny bit of magenta. And we're making a sort of a reddish gold color. More yellow. See how that's very transparent? So it's really hard for it to show up. You need to paint it on pretty thick. So let's paint it real thick. We're just going to do little flicks like this. When I painted this original, I was finger painting it, so it was really thick. It was a little bit easier to paint it finger painting because I did it so thick. Since this is being brushed on, we're just going to have to add a lot more paint onto our brush. Okay, so real thick there. Let's make a little more of that brownish shade we had. So big scoop of yellow, a little bit of magenta, tiny bit of blue. That was a lot of blue, so wipe some of that off. You just want a tiny bit of blue. So don't mix it into a whole big pile of blue. Let's put a little more magenta in there. We get a nice brownish shade. Let's just add a really thick layer right at the the stomach area or the center and the edges. We're going to switch brushes and use that little tiny brush. Use your number 2 round and make sure it's really dry. Dry it off, because if it's wet, it's not going to hold the paint very well. And let's just do a little scoop of that. We're going to paint this really thick. We're just adding little hairs. We'll start with the edges. Now we're just doing layers. And do the same thing in the center. You can overlap onto the black. That's okay. Whoops, got a little black on my brush. All right. Okay, so wipe that off. Now you're going to dip it right into the yellow. We'll see if that shows up. Paint it really, really thick. And I'm not pushing down hard. I'm holding my brush really lightly, because if I push down hard, it's going to scrape away the paint. And we just want to get some layers of color in there. And it'll blend as you go. That's okay, that's what you want. So that's kind of blending into the brown. And I'm keeping it real thick. But you want it to look like little hair, so just every once in a while twist your brush and wipe off the paint, and then go right on the tip of the brush. And then you can get little skinny lines. Just using the very tip of the brush. We're not going all the way to the edge. Just keeping this basically in the center section of the bee. You want those little hairs to overlap into the darker color. See all these little white marks? That was from my pinky. When I was trying to keep a steady hand, I used my nail to set my finger down and it left a bunch of marks, so we'll have to go back over that with black. And then let's take a little bit of white, mix that with the yellow. And you're going to put a little bit of white right in the center. And we just keep this right in the center. I'm just doing a mix of white and yellow. And you can go back and forth. Let's go back and make a more yellowy golden color. So you want it to be darker and then get a little bit lighter and then lighter in the center. So we need to make a little more of that brownish color. Reddish brown. Do a darker brown mix too. And then we're going to add little bits of these colors in the black. Just kind of scattered. But make sure all the hairs are kind of coming out in this direction. Kind of like they're bursting out. And these will go up and out in this direction. You don't want them going all different directions because then it won't look like the hair is consistent. Just a little bit so it looks like the pollen collected onto the little hairs. We're going to go back over it with some black. So I'm going to take some of the lighter gold color here and there. I'm wiping off some of that paint just so the little tip of my brush. Just using the very tip of the brush. Just gonna throw in a few little other colors. Let's do a little bit of some blue and white down here. I'm going to take a little black, and then we'll go back over it with black. So you just see a little bit of that color popping through, but not too much. If you get too much of that other color, then you can just take the black and cover it. And let's do some hairs kind of overlapping onto the yellow stripes. Okay, then let's hang off your little brush. And let's add I'm going to take a little bit of the blue. Just add a little swipe on the underside of the legs. And then wiping that off, and I'm taking a little bit of this brownish color and just adding a little hint on the legs there. I don't want so much of the leg showing, so I'm going to take a little bit of black and just kind of cover up over that so it looks like the fur is sort of coming out on top of it. Oh, we gotta do the little antenna. So, cleaning off my brush. So I have a nice fresh brush. Drying it off, and I'm gonna put just a little bit of black on the very tip of my brush and have it come out from the top of the head. Just a skinny, skinny little line. Oops. Got a little fatter than I wanted, but that's all right. Actually, I don't like how that's coming, so I'm gonna take my 5/8 angular brush and erase. I got my brush a little bit wet. I'm just wiping away. Just kind of reshaping that. Okay. And now we need to do the little wings. So let's make a light blue. I'm gonna take a scoop of white, doesn't matter what brush you use. A little bit of blue. And again, these are not anatomically correct wings. Put a little more blue. I'm gonna take just a touch of black. A little bit of a grayish blue color. I'm gonna take my little brush. I got it a little bit wet. And I'm just gonna create some wings coming right from about right here. I'm gonna loop around and then there'll be one behind it. So let's just start with and again, these are not what a real bee wing looks like. This is just kind of implied. And then we'll have one coming from behind. Smaller one. We'll do that. And then I'm just gonna create some veins and some little, this is like not anything specific. I'm just creating some little squiggly lines. I'm not pushing down hard, just very lightly, just kind of having lines sort of grow off of each other. Using just the tip of my brush, sort of squiggly lines. Oops, that got a little fat. Adding just a little white highlight on the edge of the wing. Kind of fade it off a little bit. And a very thin, kind of watered down, just creating some little squiggles. Sort of veining. I think I need to add just a little more of that light blue. I feel like it needs a little more curving around here, so I'm just going to add a little more fluff on the booty there. Even it out a little. Fix that little wing a little bit. Oops, I got a hair stuck. There we go. let's add a tiny bit of a highlight right here. Just a little more there. And what else? Maybe a little bit more of that brown right on the top of his leg there. Just creating a little bit of a highlight on the top of the leg. And then if you want to add just, I think I just want a few more bits of color here and there. Maybe a little bit of a yellow. This one just looks like some pollen. Oops, that was too much, but I'll add a little more black. Now I'm going to go back in with some black. Now, let's create just a little bit of a shadow right under the wing. So I'm going to get my brush wet. I'm going to take just a little bit of, we'll just swirl it around in some of that blue and gray. I'm getting my brush wet, so it's very watery. Just a little bit, and I'm just going to do it right under these white. It's a very thin, watered down. You got to make sure that's the wings are really dry first. And I'm just creating a little bit of a shadow under there. Now let's switch to the, switching to my number 8 Filbert. And I'm just lightly creating a shadow under there. If you want to do the flicking of the color, I would suggest waiting till it's completely dry. Get your brush very wet, so you have a very watery, I'm going to take some of the black, so it should be very watery. Laying it flat's probably a better idea, but you can just sort of, you just want to rub your finger and flick the brush. Maybe test it out on something else first if you're not familiar with this technique. But I'm just going to flick a few bits around. You don't want to do too much. I'm also going to do a couple other colors. I'm going to do this golden color. Do a little bit of that. Don't have enough paint on there. This one does not want to come off as easily, but. And last but not least, I'm gonna do some white. Okay, I think that's good. Add a little more white detail with that tiny brush. Let's add a little more white highlight on the edge of the wings. And some little very light squiggles. Again, this is just sort of an implied wing. I'm watering down the white quite a bit. Just using the tip of the brush. It's not like a real solid, bright white, it's just adding a little bit of squiggle. All right. And then what I like to do is I always take a picture on my phone. And then I look at the photo and see if I notice things, because it's easier to notice things in a photo than it is when you're looking straight up at it. I feel like I want this back, the head right here, to arch just a little higher so it looks like he's curving over more. So what we could do there is take some of that darker sienna color, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of fluff right here. I need to make it a little darker. A little more magenta. Get that same shade that I had. So I'm just adding a little more right here. Yep, I always have paint on it. A little higher. And then do a little black. Just like right here. And I need a little more of that brown right there. Okay. Now I feel like I need some of that lighter color. Just to blend it out. A little more yellow. Right in here. Take a little bit of that light yellow, white mix, add a little more And a little bit of that white right in the center. Okay. Now I feel like I made it too dark and then too light, so I need it in between. So I'm going to take a little more yellow in this color. Okay. Take a picture. All right, so we're all done. I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.